I'm Alex Perkins, and I'm the art director on Call of the Wild: The Angler.
Hi, and I'm Rushy, and I'm the game director on Call of the Wild: The Angler.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about The Angler. I caught the reveal and the previous Q&A that you did, and I'm very excited, and had to reach out as soon as I possibly could to get some questions out to you guys. The first thing that I'd like to do is just tell us just a little bit about the game itself for those that may not be aware.
Well, The Angler's a unique fishing game. It's about exploring a vast and atmospheric open world on foot, boat or off-road vehicle in search of those best fishing spots. And then obviously when you do find that spot, it's about engaging in exciting fish battles against unique fish species with AI traits and behaviours that hopefully will give you a good challenge. And ultimately it's about becoming a master angler on your own terms, learning new techniques, adapting your strategies, and enjoying it with other people. It's a social multiplayer game where you can go out and explore together, and hopefully learn some tricks from each other and find those great fishing spots together.
Were there any specific inspirations behind The Angler? I know it sort of makes sense given the previous games from Expansive Worlds that this might be a natural fit, but was there anything that kind of drove you to say, yeah, let's do fishing?
This was discussed quite a bit in the early phases of kind of concept and a prototype and trying to work out where we go next with Expansive Worlds, because obviously The Hunter has been a fantastic title for Expansive Worlds, and we wanted to kind of take what they'd done and do something different with it and build upon it, and fishing just felt like the natural thing to complement it. Obviously you're not doing the same sort of activity. Obviously you're exploring open world in many ways, but obviously with The Hunter you're kind of looking for clues and you're hunting down wild animals as you go, but this is a very different sort of pace and different sort of atmosphere. It's a lot more relaxing, so in many ways it just sits side by side with The Hunter. I can't call it Call of the Wild anymore. As something that you can kind of bounce between the two games and have fun, I think, and have different types of experiences, even though we're trying to capture that same emotion of being out there in the wild and enjoying yourself.
Can you let us know how many reserves you'll have at launch and the size?
Yeah, we've got Golden Ridge Reserve, which actually Alex could probably talk to a little bit more detail about why we chose that location and what we're doing with it. It's 64 square kilometers in terms of visual size, and then we've got 24 square kilometers of playable game space for you to explore, so plenty of miles upon miles of connected waterways for you to explore. And obviously we've made it as dense and interesting as possible, which Alex, you want to talk to a little bit about why Golden Ridge?
Certainly, yeah. Golden Ridge is based on northwest Wyoming, so it has a plethora of very interesting waterways, all connected to some of the most beautiful parts of America. So you've got a wide variety of landscapes, geology, and because of that you generate interesting waterways, which gives you wonderful and varied places to go fish. So as well as it being good for fishing, giving a variety of rivers and lakes throughout, it also gives a big variety of biomes. So we go from almost sort of deserty scrubland all the way up into sort of rocky alpine and everything in between. So we've got all this trapped into the lovely 64 kilometer area, and gives a real sense of variation as you explore the map, giving you wonderful new spots to find to fish, exploit the different times of day, and try and learn how even the same species of fish operates depending on whether you're on one side of the map to being at the top in the corner on another side of the map.
How big and small are the bodies of water, like the lakes, the rivers, and the ponds that you fish in? Is there what would be the smallest versus the biggest, just to kind of give an idea of scope?
So the smallest would be sort of pond, sort of back garden pond almost, and then the largest, what would it be? A few, maybe 5 minutes sort of traveling along a boat across a lake.
Yeah, is that Bear Lake? I think that's one of the biggest ones we've got in the game. How deep is it? Is it 30 meters, I'm thinking?
About a sixth of the map, I would have thought, from the top to the bottom, from the opening mouth of one estuary to the other. But then you can follow the river and go all the way across, almost all the way to the other side of the map as well. So you can sit in the boat for a good half of the map easily before you have to try and traverse to a new spot and then get a new waterway.
That's when you hit those waterfalls, isn't it? But yeah, I think we've got a really good kind of variety of water bodies, and I think it's something we haven't really talked to directly. And I did see it when I was on the stream. A lot of people asking about or do we have rivers as well as lakes? And yes, we do. We have both to fish in, which obviously provides, you know, two kind of unique fishing experiences.
I'm just curious about the research. So obviously, you know, this is looking to be something that's realistic and immersive. Like, what kind of research goes into that? Like, is there any actual fishing? Are you doing lots of fishing as a studio to kind of familiarize yourself?
There is actual fishing taking place, yes. The one thing that was frustrating, obviously, during our development was obviously the situation with COVID and the various lockdowns we got stuck in. We had a variety of fishing trips and things that we had planned and unable to attend, but we have been out there, we have been on the lakes and the rivers, we've been talking to experts, we've been talking to consultants, we have our own internal anglers experts sort of Slack channel. We're working closely with what we're calling a carp council of community members as well, again to get advice and feedback on the game. So we're talking to as many fishermen, experienced people, and trying to get out there as well and do as much fishing. And we've been buying lots of gear as well, not always for fishing necessarily, but making sure we get the sound effects right, the animations right, and all these types of things, and even trying to test the limits of equipment, you know, see how far you can push things before they break, and making sure we're kind of getting the right behaviors and things into the game.
Certainly myself and a few of the animators and some of the other artists had great fun trying to motion capture with all the rods and reels, which was entertaining experience, getting all dressed up and then trying to actually motion capture. And I know the lead programmer had a great fun with the physics, messing around with how lines work and how they should all ravel up and unravel. So yeah, we did lots of technical tests as well as learning how to do the manual task of fishing itself.
Well, if my line's not in the water, if I'm traveling from point A to point B on land, what about the world is going to draw me in? Like, how do you make that world engaging when it's primarily a fishing game?
Yeah, that's something obviously when we started talking about the game was on our mind all the time. We know we wanted to create a beautiful, large and atmospheric open world, but as you say, you couldn't just have it where it's just about the fishing. Obviously, if all you want to do is fishing and that's what you want to focus on, that's fine, because you can get to the fishing spots nice and quick for a variety of transport means and even fast travel. But we did want to make sure there's always something for you to see and do. So obviously you've got all the beautiful vistas and different biomes and things to check out just from a visual perspective. But we've also included a series of missions which include fishing challenges and favours for the warden. So we've got two characters inside our world who you'll interact with, Sophia the shopkeeper and Clayton the warden, and they will give you various things and tasks and objectives to do around the map. So you'll need to go and explore, find watchtowers, find specific fishing locations, try to catch certain fish in certain locations, and also help Clayton the reserve warden with a variety of kind of tasks to help clean up the reserve here and there and get rid of some invasive species and fix some of his equipment. So you've always got something to do on your travels as you try to find that best fishing spot. And of course, with the multiplayer side of things as well, we always wanted to make sure that you always had the opportunity to take a journey together. So whether that's, you know, jumping in a boat together or jumping in a car together, you can explore as one and have that kind of social side of things, you know, talking about the fishing and your biggest catches as you drive to your location.
Is the shopkeeper like where you will purchase your gear, or is there multiple ways to do that? Is there different methods?
No, it is where you'll purchase your gear. So Sophia has Taylor's Tackles, which is her shop, and that is the place you go, not only to buy your gear, and your gear obviously consists of all your fishing tackle, your apparel in terms of what you wear, different vehicles, because you can get different skins and things for them inside there. But you can also sell your gear, of course, if you've run out of money or you want to upgrade to a certain rod, etc. You can also customize your character in there as well, so you can change your outfits and various things. And it's also where you manage your storage at the same place as well, because you've got a backpack and you can only carry, you know, so many rods and reels. You've got to make that choice about, you know, what fish species am I going to focus on today when you go on your travels, because you can't necessarily take everything you're going to need for exploring the world. So you're going to be going back there regularly, and as soon as you open that location as a fast travel spot, you can get back there instantly. So there's no real hassle. Our loading's nice and quick. So you can just nip back there, get what you need, and then get back out roughly to where you were, because we've got a variety of outposts around the world which can get you to the locations nice and quickly as soon as you've discovered them. And just across the way from some Severe and Taylor's Tackles is the Warden. Although the Warden, I will say, does switch between locations depending on the time of day. So Sometimes you'll have to go out and hunt and find them.
And I also wanted to talk about how you balance gameplay between, let's say you have someone who casually just wants to load in, throw their line in the water, they don't want to overthink it, they just want to go fishing and, relax, versus the hardcore angler that really wants that immersive experience. Like, how do you strike that balance from a gameplay perspective?
That's always one of the toughest things, I think, in any genre of game. How do you balance a game that works for all types of players that are from the who've never fished potentially to those who've been fishing for decades. So what we tried to do is, of course, in terms of the simulation and the physics behind it, we've tried to make sure that it's deep and realistic and authentic as possible, and then focus on how we can actually bring in those newcomers through a quite thorough first-time user experience. So when you first start the game, you go through a step-by-step sort of tutorial, which really guides you through all the controls, all the mechanics, and all the basics of fishing. But then after you've been through that, it's about 10 minutes long. It's not too long. You're free to do what you want. Now, what we'd expect at that point is that the people who know fishing, they can just go out, do exactly what they want. They can, head off, and they know roughly what to do because they've fished in real life. They'll know the best fishing spots. They'll know the bait that they need to catch what fish they're after. But for those who don't know, we've got a dedicated tutorial board, and that tutorial board will teach you how to catch each of the individual species inside the world and more fishing techniques as well. So it kind of give you the 101s, as we're calling them, in each of the fish and the fishing techniques and things. So you can dive down deeper and learn these things that you'll need if you want to be that master angler. So we've taken it from let's build it deep and then make sure we tutorialize it and make sure that those newcomers can kind of find their way into the game and hopefully, become an angler themselves.
And I'm curious about noise in the angler. Now, this was something that, if you're going to travel across one of these giant lakes in a boat, and you said it could take possibly, just guesstimate, maybe 5 minutes or so. Boats make a lot of noise. So is that the kind of thing that is going to affect the fish population? Like if I go barreling across a lake in a boat and make a bunch of noise and then come to a stop, is it going to take some time for things to settle down before I can expect to catch fish? Like, much like a vehicle in The Hunter, for example, would scare away the animals.
Fish can be spooked. Yes, fish can be spooked not only by vehicles, they can also be spooked by you as the player jumping and running about. When we started to do this in multiplayer, we did discover some issues here and there in terms of griefing and making sure that other people weren't disturbing other people's experiences. So what we've done is made sure that only you can spook your own fish, essentially. So we tried to make sure that other people can't spoil that. So as long as you're nice and quiet as you would expect to be, then that's not a problem. But yeah, I mean, once you've anchored up, you might have to wait a few moments for the fish to kind of come back around.
I was going to say, it has to be said, it's one of my favourite parts of the experience is letting the game settle down and letting the audio ambience start to wash over you as you're waiting for fish to catch your line. It's one of the most relaxing elements. We're kind of fortunate as well because we can keep that game running while we're working on other stuff. So we get a real nice sense of being outdoors, sitting there, wind blowing, waves lapping along the shore, generally just enjoying all that ambience, which is hopefully something that the player will be encouraged to do. Once they've gone and got to the place that they want to be, they'll have a chance to settle down and actually really enjoy the immersive audio that comes with it as well.
Yeah. If our audio director was here, or audio lead was here, he'd tell you a lot more about the amount of time and effort we've really sunk into that, making sure that not only that each of the different biomes sound differently, but each of the kind of different types of water bodies have that different sort of audio resonance, and how each location generally feels different through the atmosphere. And then what we've done with the musical stings as you start to explore to kind of heighten that atmosphere and kind of draw you into the world. It's I think it's one of the things that I think you'll notice very early on when playing the game.
Yeah, it's a noticeable improvement to the Apex engine, is the way that the audio technologies expand.
I think that's very cool. Personally, I'm the same way. Like, I try to play, any kind of an open world game or simulation game. Like when I play The Hunter, I prefer not to barrel down the highway in an ATV. I would rather walk there and quietly and enjoy the subtlety and the sights and sounds. So it sounds like the system of like, hey, if you want to take a boat across the water really fast, like there is a consequence to that, at least for a minute. So I did want to ask about the spawn system for fish species, and I heard you talk about this in the Q&A, Rushy, and you were mentioning about how that was one of the more complicated things. So I was just hoping that you could kind of talk about it a bit more, and how the spawn system works for fish.
Sure thing. Yeah, I mean, I think we mentioned in the Q&A that I think it was one of the toughest systems we had to get right. Obviously, when we were looking at how we're going to approach this early on, we was like, oh, are we going to do this and hand place spots around the map where fish should spawn? But then what happens if we make changes to the map? And obviously, we wanted a dynamic time of day, which obviously affects the temperature of the water. And we knew we had to make a systemic system, which was driven by the environment. So so it wasn't hand tuned by designers' hands. It is, we set up the world, we set up the conditions, and they drive the systems. So depending on the altitude, the water temperature, the time of day, and obviously the depth of the water, as in how deep the water bodies are at a particular point inside the world, will determine which fish can spawn where and when. So you've really got to know where the best spots are at the best times of day, and we'll give you all the information you need to be able to make that decision to go where to go fishing.
Let's say I have a massive fish on the line and I'm excited, and you know what, I think you mentioned that diamond was a thing in the angler. I don't know, obviously I don't know that well, I'm trying to reel it in, but I lose that fish and I want to get that fish back. Is that fish persistent, or is it just a random chance that whatever happens to spawn is?
That fish is persistent for that session. So for example, if you happen to quit the game and then come back, we dynamically reseed and put everyone back in. However, if you're still at that same spot and you've just lost that fish will still be active in that area.
Will there be a pressure system? So if I just continuously go to the exact same spot on the exact same lake and I just keep fishing it constantly, does it affect the chances that I can catch fish there? Does it have an impact on?
No, we don't have a pressure system, because obviously that's something that was implemented in the Hunter to try and encourage you to move around it. It's something we did think about. It's a very difficult thing to try and communicate to players as to why they're no longer catching fish in a particular area. So from a gameplay point of view, we wanted to make sure that players could consistently feel like they could go to the spots that they frequently use to catch the fish. However, we do have a scoring system to try and encourage people to try and mix things up and catch fish with the right gear to get the bigger scores. And obviously, if you're after diamond fish and stuff like that, it won't be as easy as just going to that spot and expecting them to be there every time.
What opportunities do you feel a game like the Angler affords you in terms of informing players, like best fishing practices, perhaps preservation or endangered species?
Yeah, this is something that when we went on some of our fishing trips and we talked to a lot of the instructors and experts, and this is something they were very keen to teach us, to make sure that when we were fishing, we were treating the fish with utmost respect, making sure we're getting the hook out correctly, placing them on suitable mats, not on the ground, etc., trying to avoid the use of nets where possible. And it's something that was, when I first joined Expansive Worlds and I was introduced to the department, it was always told to us, we want to enjoy the open world but do so in an ethical way and represent that in our game. So we've really kind of took that to heart, which is why we chose to go down the catch and release system. I noticed that a few players were like, well, how do you progress inside the game if you're not catching fish to sell them? Well, what we've done is, whenever you catch a fish inside the game and release it, whenever you release it, you'll get XP that will contribute towards your player level. Your player level will award you credits, and then the credits drive the economy to buy and sell various gear inside the game. So whilst you're not directly selling them, you are being rewarded as you play. And I know that people have asked off the back of this, will there be a trophy lodge or anything similar to that? And obviously we do want to give the players the ability to show off their catches, because that's an important part of the game. So when you do catch that fish, we'll give you the opportunity to hold that fish, turn off all the HUD, capture a screenshot, and then of course share that on Twitter or wherever you want to share with your friends. But it's certainly something we're listening to in terms of feedback as well. If in terms of how players want to show off the fish, and I think, as I've mentioned as well, we really want to commit to and support this game in the long term and make sure we deliver on the features that whilst we want to try and have everything in day one, It's something it's impossible. We want to grow the game with the community.
One of the things that always impresses me, and I mean, there's going to be comparisons to the hunter, is just how fluid the movement is and the visuals of animals in the hunter. And then I started thinking about movement and behavior and visuals of fish, and I thought that has to be quite complicated. So I'm just curious about some of the challenges of fish and the same kind of behavior, movement, visuals.
Yeah, it's been an interesting learning process for myself and the animators in particular. It's hard to actually get really good first-hand as well as video footage of exactly what fish are doing underwater. There's lots of really good documentaries to go and watch, and use lots of talk. But speaking to anglers in particular, they get a real sense of what a fish is doing even without being able to see them. So representing that, animating it, and then getting sort of the mindset of the fish so it reacts to the bait and reacts to the line in the way that you'd expect, and then the movement that comes with that has been a real interesting challenge and has required quite a lot of new bits of tech to be written and whole new systems on the animation side to drive all of that sort of AI behavior and match the animations to it. It's been incredibly fun, but also an incredibly weird thing to try and replicate without really being able to spend all your time underwater with goggles on, watching what the fish are actually really doing.
Yeah, and it's the fish, we have to make sure they not only look good under the water where you can see them just coming up to the surface and reacting to the water, but making sure that when you actually get them out of the water as well, they look just as good, close up. Alex, I know that Alex, there's been so many back and forth with the shaders and the tech to make sure that the fish look accurate, and it's we want to try and make sure we had the best fish models out there, and I think we've done a very good job.
Yeah. Now we've just we've learned quite a few things about how fish work, and in particular their lighting is quite interesting. They've got like 2 reflection models that go on simultaneously with the scales. They've also obviously got that sort of clear slimy coat as they come out of the water, and they've got iridescence depending on their type, but catfish don't have the second reflection model. And then of course that all acts different when it's underwater compared to when it's in the air. So yeah, modeling all of that information is it's been certainly slightly easier than the animation because it's easy enough to get hold of a fish, look at it underwater, and then take it out of water and see the variation. But still, it's an interesting challenge for the render programmers just as much as the fish modelers.
Yeah, I never really thought of that. If you're trying to study animals that are above ground, there's probably a whole lot more video than there is when you're trying to study fish that are underwater. So that's actually a pretty unique challenge. So I'm actually curious. I wanted to ask, have you guys given any any thought to VR support with the Angler? Whether I didn't see it as listed for launch on the Steam page, so I wasn't sure if maybe that was something that you'd talked about in the future.
It's not something we're supporting. We're just going to be, on PC and a standard 2D screen. However, I'm not gonna lie, it's something we have talked about at various points. Me and Alex, we've been fortunate enough to work on VR projects in the past. And I personally love VR as a platform, as an immersive way to play games. I don't want to rule anything out. I'm not going to commit to anything at all. I think fishing in VR would be cool. Whether we're going to do it or not, it's not something we're doing right now. But you never know. If it's something that, again, if the community all demand it or going wild for VR and everyone wants it, then yeah, maybe it's something we look into in the future.
That's the message to the community, is be vocal in terms of like giving feedback about the things that they're passionate about, and obviously I know listening to the Q&A, that was very clear, is that as you kind of see what players want, that's going to help drive the direction of the game in at least some manner.
Exactly. Yeah, we've tried to map out some sort of direction for the initial few months after launch, but we keep coming back to the words listen and be reactive. And it's kind of a mantra almost now we've kind of set ourselves up for, and we've already started this behind the scenes a little bit in terms of, I mentioned we're working with what we're calling the Carp Council, We're we're getting them playing the game behind the scenes, giving us feedback on a regular basis, and we're trying to take on board as much of that feedback and react to it as quickly. And the same thing when we go as launch, we'll have our community managers. We're going to be all over every social platform and forums, and making sure that we're trying to capture all that information and try and log it, prioritize it, and work out what we should try and tackle first.
Tackle first. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if that was intentional, but it was beautiful just the same. So my final question, I know you're not ready to discuss a release date. I just wanted to say, if someone's watching this and they're curious about when the Angler does launch, where they can play it, what do you have in terms of that information that you can share?
Well, you're going to be able to play it this year on PC, and you'll be able to choose to play it either on Steam, Epic, or Windows Store, and of course that will all be cross-play as well. So whether your friends are on Epic or you're on Steam, you can still all play it together.
Okay. And obviously, besides Shacknews.com, where should people go when they're saying, "Hey, I need to keep up to date with the Angler and what's coming in the weeks and months ahead, leading up to when I get to play it"? So, where should they follow you?
Oh, there's so many. That's the hard bit nowadays. So we've got the official COTW, the Angler Reddit, of course. Same for Discord. Obviously, you can follow us on Twitter at COTW the Angler, or you can follow Expansive Worlds. And we're also on Facebook, of course. Again, just search Call Wild the Angler. So pretty much everything apart from TikTok and Snapchat, I think.
There's someone out there that is that's very disappointed that they're not going to be able to follow the Angler on TikTok, but I think they'll be okay. There seems like there's a lot of options there. So I just want to thank you very much for your time. It was great to sit down and talk to you. I can't wait to try it out myself. I won't take up any more of your time, but thank you very much, both of you, for stopping by.
Thanks. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I can't wait for everyone to get their hands on the game soon.